In this video, we will show you how to install this front strut boot kit on this Honda Accord. This is part of your front suspension, located inside your front wheel well. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we need to do is safely raise and support the front of the vehicle so the wheels are off the ground. Remove all 4 of your 19mm lug nuts, the hubcap, and the wheel. Let's get the wheel off of here. Now that we have that done, let's make our way down at the lower control arm. We're looking for the bracket that comes off the bottom of the strut. You're going to find that it has a 17mm headed mounting bolt that comes through from the front towards the rear, and there's a 17mm mounting nut. Let's go ahead and remove this. Inspect your mounting hardware, of course. See if we can pull this out of here. You may have to use a hammer and punch. Let's make our way up that bracket. Now you're going to remove the pinch bolt that comes through from the rear towards the front. This pinch bolt holds the bracket to the lower portion of the strut. Use a 14mm for this. At this point, you should be able to remove this. If you need to, you can tap on it with a hammer. Be extremely careful not to cause any damage to your axle or CV boot when removing this. Give that an inspection. Make sure it's not rotted, weak, or damaged. This one looks fine. Move along the front of the strut. You're going to find that you have 2 mounting brackets holding the flex hose in place. Use a 12mm to remove each one of the mounting bolts. Go ahead and separate that from the front strut, and now we can make our way up inside the engine compartment. Along the side of the engine compartment is where you're going to find your strut tower. You want to be extremely careful. Do not try to loosen the center nut on the strut. We're only going to loosen this forward nut here and fully remove each of the other 2. We'll be using a 14mm for this. Now let's reach in through the wheel well, take hold of the front strut, lift it up, and fully remove the mounting hardware here. Remove the strut from inside the wheel well. Let's get this over to the spring compressor. Now that I have this mounted in the spring compressor, before I start compressing the coil spring, we're going to talk about the alignment of the coil spring in comparison to the front shock itself. You can see the shock has a base that dips down, and that's exactly where the coil spring will sit. Let's put a nice marking on there. You can use pretty much anything for this. Now we'll move up from that point all the way up here, and you can see that it aligns perfectly with this mounting stud up along the top. Let's make a marking there as well. Now that we have everything clearly marked, we can continue on with compressing the coil spring. You want to be extremely careful doing this. Once you feel as though you do have some movement, you can pause on compressing. We'll make sure that we're holding on to the bottom of this area and remove our upper mounting nut. To make this a little easier for us, we can use some locking pliers. Just hold it on there. At this point, we'll be paying attention up along the top. I've used some penetrant. We'll be using a 14mm for the nut and a 5mm Allen head for the shaft of the front shock. This on there. Can remove the upper washer from the area. Now you can take hold of the upper mounting point. Typically you can give this a little wiggle and lift it up and off of here. If you need to give it a couple taps with a hammer, you want to be careful not to cause too much vibration, shift it around, and potentially have an issue where the spring breaks free from the compressor. Now we can hold on to that strut. We'll get this out of here. Now we can separate this area, remove the washer, remove your Johnson pumper. A quick inspection and we'll set this aside. Now we can start removing the protective boot and top washer from this area. If you find you have a hard time pulling this out of here, you can use a pry bar from the bottom and just press it right on up and through. There it is, friend. Now let's install our shock boot here. Can take this and slide it right on over the shock shaft here. Just have to press this down in here. You can see the spring compressor is blocking this, but that's okay. Just help it down. Now we can put this back together, making sure that we use our washers. Get this first one on here. Now we can remount the cap here. Have a look along the bottom of the rubber bushing. You can see exactly where the coil spring ends. We'll take this and rest it in position so it aligns with the end of the coil spring. Let's go ahead and turn that clockwise until it feels as though it wants to stop. Now, before we put anything else together, let's just check our alignment here to ensure that we are properly aligned. That looks pretty good. Back up along the top, we'll be using the washer that has the concave indent. We want to make sure we have that facing downwards towards the bushing. Now we have a smaller washer. Once again, it has a concave indent. This time it'll be facing upwards towards where the upper mounting nut will be. Let's get the upper mounting nut on here. Start it on by hand, snug it up. Once you have this nut bottomed out, the torque for it is 22 foot-pounds. To do this, you could hold the center shaft and tighten the nut to 22 foot-pounds if you have a crow's foot. If you do not have a crow's foot attachment, we can continue on by holding the nut and turning the center shaft counterclockwise to torque this. There we are. Let's get these off of here. One last quick confirmation to ensure that everything's properly aligned. And now we can get this out of the compressor and over to the vehicle. All right, let's get this in the vehicle. When you go to install this, you want to ensure you have it in the proper orientation, so you have the area for the pinch bolt facing towards the center of the vehicle. Once you've done so, you can continue on by starting on each of your mounting nuts along the top. All right, let's pause right here and make our way back inside the wheel well. Now we can install the lower shock bracket here. We'll make sure we have it in the proper orientation. So I have to slide this into place, being careful not to cause any damage to our axle boot. There we are. Get this aligned. Slide this into position. Start in your upper pinch bolt by hand. It's a good idea to use some blue thread locker on this. Snug it up, torque it to 32 foot-pounds. Now let's follow this down to the lower mounting point. When you go to install this mounting bolt, you want to come through from the front towards the rear. If you need to, you could raise or lower the suspension as needed. The torque for this is 47 foot-pounds. A quick confirmation that we've torqued each of these, and we'll make our way to our flex hose mounting bolts. Get this aligned. Start in our mounting bolts and snug them up. Double check to make sure your flex hose is properly secured. You do not want this getting damaged while you're driving down the road. Let's give the area one last quick inspection to make sure everything's torqued as necessary and we can reinstall the wheel with the hubcap. When installing your hubcap, you want to look for the valve stem port. Align it with your valve stem. With that aligned, all of the lug stud holes should align as well, and we'll continue on with the lug nuts. Start them on, bottom them out. We'll get the wheel safely back on the ground and we can torque each of these to 80 foot-pounds. With the wheel back on the ground, we'll torque these in a crisscross manner. Torqued. With the complete weight of the vehicle back down on the ground, we'll make our way back inside the engine compartment. It's time to tighten each one of our 3 mounting nuts. Once you have them snug, torque them to 28 foot-pounds. Okay, friend, we finished our installation. At this point, you want to make sure you go over and do the exact same thing on the other side of the vehicle. Once you've done so, go ahead and take your vehicle for a road test down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.